Welcome back to 5.6, confidence intervals. Let's begin. Now, confidence intervals are the interval in which you're trying to determine where the true value you're trying to determine is estimated to lie. So confidence intervals can be expressed in a number of ways. They could be expressed as 54 plus or minus 4%, or sometimes they give you the interval, which would be 50 to 58%. Okay? I'm just going to click back a couple slides here and show you some of this stuff. Confidence intervals deals with statistics. Okay? By using statistics, we can figure out the general information for an entire population. To do this, you need to survey small groups. But does it make sense to survey an entire population? No, obviously not. So, but by surveying small groups, will you get the exact response of the total population? No, that's unlikely, and that's where confidence intervals come in. For example, you don't have to write this down. Let's pretend that I surveyed the class and asked who people would vote for in the SRC elections. Brett got 8 votes, Jared got 8 votes, Steve got 5 votes, Dana got 2 votes. I could calculate the percentages that each candidate received. Okay? 34, 34, 21, and 8.7. Would the percentages of the class results be the exact same as the entire school voting? No, right? We can't guarantee that the results of this sample size would match the school as a whole, but it does give you a bit of an idea of how the school feels, okay? So, what you have to account for is the margin of error. The margin of error is the possible difference between the estimate of the value you're trying to determine and the true value for the population. The margin of error is generally expressed as a plus or minus percentage. You'll see this a lot, and I don't know how much you follow things like this, but in political elections, they'll have polls, right? So CNN runs a poll of how many people are going to vote for the Democrats and how many are going to vote for the Republicans. And the polls always mention, so these results are accurate plus or minus 5%, okay? Because they can't speak for the entire population, so they have to account for the margin of error based on their sample size. So here's what it would look like in practice. First off, what is the margin of error if it's 54 plus or minus 4%? Well, the margin of error is right here. So if you're asked for what's the margin of error, you could express it as plus or minus 4%. Now, if they give you the confidence interval, if I tell you that I'm confident, my confidence interval is 30 to 46% is my confidence interval, and I asked you for the margin of error, what I would do is I would just go 30 plus 46. I got to find the middle of these two numbers. So I can add them, get 76, divide by 2, and that equals 38. So 38, to go from 38 to 30 would be minus 8%. And to go from 38 to 46 would be plus 8%. So if they gave you the confidence interval of 30 to 46% and asked you for the margin of error, you would just find the middle of those two numbers, and then you can see that you add and subtract, it'll be the same amount. So your margin of error here is 8%, okay? Now here's a more example. There's not a lot of examples on this one, but this is the type of question you could see on the test here. And then there's the confidence level, which is the likelihood that the results for the true population lie within the range of the confidence interval. The confidence interval, for most parts, we're going to get it as a percentage, and it's very easy to spot. So here's an example. This is the one I wanted to try. A telephone survey of 600 randomly selected people was conducted in an urban area. The survey determined that 76% of people ages 18 to 34 have a social networking account. The results are accurate within plus or minus 4 percent points 19 times out of 20. So some of the questions they can ask you are for the margin of error, the confidence interval, and the confidence level. Well, the confidence level is they are confident in their results 19 times out of 20. So 19 out of 20 as a percentage is 95%. Okay. The confidence interval, sorry, let's do the margin of error first. The margin of error is plus or minus 4 percent points. So that's plus or minus 4% is the margin of error. And to find the confidence interval, you go to the percent they selected. They determined 76% of people had a social networking account plus or minus 4 percent points. So 76% minus 4 would be 72%. And 76 plus 4 would be 80%. So they are 95% confident that between 72 and 80% of people have a social networking account. Okay? Now, on the next slide, they're going to give you the population of the entire city, and then you have to calculate sort of what is the range of the population that would have a social networking account. So it says if the total population is 300,000 people, how many people can we expect to have a social networking account? Well, we know that the percentages are 72% to 80%, right? That was our confidence interval. Now we're going to multiply that by the total number of people. 300,000, 300,000. So 0.72 times 300,000 is 216,000. And 80% times 300,000 is 240,000. With what confidence can we say these results? Well, we were told that we are 95% confident in these results. With 95% confidence, we can say that between 216 to 240,000 people would have a social networking account. Okay? So as I mentioned earlier, this is not the most difficult section we've done. This one's a pretty easy finish to the chapter. Okay, you just find the confidence interval, multiply it by the total population, and you will have your range of population. Okay. Now, this example we're not going to get into too much, but the thing we want to point to and talk about is how does sample size used in a poll affect the margin of error? Okay. And the answer is, and as you can imagine, as your sample size grows, your margin of error gets smaller. Okay? If I were to sample this class about who you would vote for SRC president, or what your favorite fast food place is, it's a small class, so our margin of error would be higher, right? Here, the sample size was only 844, and their margin of error was 3.4%. But as the sample size grows all the way up to 1800, the margin of error shrinks down to plus or minus 2.3%. So the more people you can get information from, the less likely you've got errors in your findings. You might have done a little bit of this in grade 9 math. You can remember back to that. But just know that as the sample size grows, the margin of error shrinks, okay? That brings us to the end of the section. As I mentioned, this is a pretty easy one. Your workbook is on page 131. Just numbers 1 to 4 and 9 are good practice. And then as well, you're going to want to work on the chapter 5 review. There's a review in your workbook on page, one moment here. There's a review and a test in your workbook on pages 135 to 139. And as well, on Microsoft Teams, I'll show you in the chapter 5 file. On Microsoft Teams in the chapter 5 file, there is the review with the answers provided at the end. So the workbook questions are good, but the review in the Microsoft Teams, these are the types of questions you can expect to see on the exam. So these are definitely ones you're going to want to try. All right. Thank you. Have a good day.